The Ecuador National Electoral Council denied the delivery of forms to revoke the mandate of the President and Vice President of the country. The 41st Summit of Heads of Government of CARICOM ended, marked by trade and cooperation issues. And Mozambique experiences strong protests by public transport unions over the increase in fuel prices. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The plenary session of Ecuador's National Electoral Council denied the recall petition against President Guillermo Lasso. With 4 votes in favor and 1 abstention, the members of the National Council accepted the recommendation of the Directorate of Legal Counsel and decided to deny the delivery of the forms for the gathering of signatures for the recall of Lasso and Vice President Alfredo Borrero. According to the report presented by the National Director of Legal Advice, the petition against the President did not comply with the necessary requirements to justify the request, besides not attaching evidence to prove the non-compliance with the government's plan. The initiative against the Ecuadorian President was presented by a collective in Guayaquil, arguing that in his first year there have been breaches of his government plan. In Argentina, a federal court sentenced to life imprisonment the 4 member soldiers involved in the death flights, the method of extermination favored by the dictatorship in that country between 1976 and 1983. The Federal Court of San Martin has imposed the sentence to the former commander of Military Institute Santiago Omar Riveros and the members of the aviation Luis del Valle, Delcy Malacalza, and Eduardo Lance, who are responsible for the kidnapping, torture, and murder of students Juan Carlos Rosase and Adrian Acrecin Beni, Roberto Aranciba, a militant of the Revolutionary Workers' Party, and another militant of the movement, Rosa Eugenia Novillo, who was also pregnant. After a trial of almost 2 years, the sentence acquires an unprecedented relevance because it finally recognizes that the Argentinian army used its planes in the flights.
Point 6. The sentence Luis del Valle Arce, whose other personal conditions were stated in the preamble, to life imprisonment and perpetual absolute disqualification from legal advisors for being considered criminally responsible co-perpetrator of the following crimes that concur in real form: illegal home invasion committed by a public official in the case of Juan Carlos Rosas, unlawful detention committed by a public official in abuse of his functions, aggravated by violence and repeated threats on 3 occasions that materially concur to the detriment of Adrián Enrique Crescin Beni, Juan Carlos Rosase, and Rosa Novillo Covavalan.
At the end of the trial against the repressors convicted by the Argentinian Federal Court, Pablo Yonto, plaintiff attorney for the victim's side, acknowledged the enormous value of the trial and of the ruling for the cause of human rights.
The sentence is undoubtedly valuable. It adds to a large number of sentences in this sense, but it has an added value. It is the first time that those responsible for death flights have been given names and surnames, and this is the first time that they have received convictions as well. It was about time. This was the method of extermination that shamefully characterized the country, and its perpetrators were enjoying a peaceful life for decades in Argentina.
Nicaragua, following the passage of Tropical Storm Bonnie, set up a committee to evaluate losses and damages at the request of President Daniel Ortega. The team will have the task of reviewing the impact caused by the storm in the country. Made up of various agencies of the Nicaraguan executive, such as the Ministries of Education, Health, Finance, Energy and Mines, and Family, among others, will make a detailed account of the damage caused by Bonnie. The task in the first stage will be to compile information on the damages caused to the productive, economic, educational, health, and social infrastructures in order to respond with the support required for each specific case. The information will also be shared with international organizations in order to manage the mobilization of resources for the financing of the recovery. The Minister of Finance, Ivan Acosta, at the head of the meeting, assured that there are priority issues on which they are working tirelessly.
To restore highly demanding issues such as returning to school. They must be in fully restored conditions for the second semester. That is a condition of the President of the Republic and the Compañera Rosario. The health centers must also show optimal conditions if they had any impact, and at the same time, in terms of humanitarian aid.
Venezuela has begun the 211th year celebration of its independence with a number of cultural events at the National Pantheon, where the remains of Simón Bolívar lie. In an act headed by Vladimir Padrinos Lopez, Minister of Defense, together with various representatives of the military and the five powers of the state, the national flag was hoisted. A cultural presentation by children followed the ceremony, recreating the hours before the 5th of July 1811, when Colonel Simón Bolívar, at just 28 years of age, called for the freedom of the homeland and Latin America's integration without further delay. The Minister of Defense greeted the Venezuelan people, recalling the historic deed and renewing the common commitment to the struggle for the defense, integrity, and dignity of the homeland. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. The 43rd Summit of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, concludes in Suriname with a focus on trade and cooperation. During the meeting, they discussed the progress of the agricultural systems agenda, climate financing, security issues, and served to update the protocols on COVID-19. The Prime Minister of Belize, John Briceño, emphasized the need to put an end to the economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the United States against Cuba and urged the attendees to make efforts to achieve, among all, the lifting of the blockade. In addition, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, during his speech stated that countries should be aware of the dangers that lie ahead, specifically the global crisis and climate change. The government of Peru reached an agreement with transport unions to end the strike which was affecting major Peruvian cities. New agreements were reached between the transportation companies and the representatives of Pedro Castillo's government. The leaders of the transport chamber pointed out that talks continue and at least 16,000 transport units will return to the streets to resume their activities. The act signed by the executive and transport workers drawn up at the headquarters of the Ministry of Transport leaves without effect the continuity of the strike, which began in the early hours of Monday morning and which affected more than 80% of the urban public transport. Minister Juan Barranzuela emphasized that the demands of the transporters are currently being discussed by technical teams formed in work tables.
We are building trust together. Transport workers have not only come today to deal with issues that were pending, but they have gone much further than that. They have brought technical and technological proposals that will begin to be discussed directly with the sector starting tomorrow, and that workers will join the technical table that has been set up in order to work together on new approaches that will even modernize the systems being worked on in the three manners of transport.
President Pedro Castillo swore in Mariano Gonzalez, the sixth Minister of the Interior, in just over a year of government. This ceremony took place at the Casares Hall of the Government Palace on Monday. The process was held 4 days after the Congress approved the suspension of the now former Minister Dimitris Sanmache, who was blamed for the escape of former head of the Ministry of Transport and Communications Juan Silva, who is wanted for alleged acts of corruption. The new minister served as head of the defense portfolio in 2016, and after resigning from the post, he rejoined Parliament, where he was unanimously elected as Vice President in 2017 and in 2020.
To you, Mr. Mariano Gonzalez Fernandez, swear by God and these holy Gospels to carry out loyally and faithfully the office of Minister of State in the Office of the Interior entrusted to you? Yes, I do swear. If you will do so, may God reward you, and if not, may the country ask for it.
Early Tuesday morning, the Russian towns of Markovo in the south-central Chukotka Autonomous District and Tyotkino in the Glushkovsky District were targeted by Ukrainian attacks. According to preliminary information from the governor of the Kursk province, Roman Starovoit, the aggressions have not yet caused any death or injuries, but due to artillery fire, some houses in the village of Popovo-Lechachi have been seriously damaged. In the village of Tyotkino, the electricity supply was affected. Citizens are on alert because of the continuing shelling. On July 3rd, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that the cities of Kursk and Belgorod were attacked by Ukraine, leaving 4 dead and 4 wounded. Sweden and Finland signed their adhesion to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization on Tuesday in Brussels, capital of Belgium, which serves as the headquarters of NATO. Swedish Foreign Minister Ann Linde and Finnish Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto have formalized this step and are waiting for the ratification documents from each member state of the military bloc. Both delegations had completed the previous step by agreeing to fulfill the political, legal, and military obligations of the Atlantic Organization in addition to other commitments required for the entry. At this hour, in the live press conference given by both the Secretary of the organization, Jens Stoltenberg, and the heads of the diplomacy of the two Scandinavian nations, they explained different aspects of the process, especially those related to Turkey's position.
At the same time, the ratification process will be launched in all NATO member countries. We highly appreciate the support of the Alliance to the membership of Finland and look forward to a swift ratification process. The membership of both Finland and Sweden will not only contribute to our own security, but to the collective security of the Alliance.
We have worked hard and tirelessly to address the issues that have been raised, and I look forward to continuing our close cooperation with you on the route to membership.
On Tuesday, the conference on Ukraine's recovery continues in Lugano, southeast Switzerland, at a meeting where all aspects of the country's recovery are being analyzed. Corruption has been a central topic of discussion. Ukraine ranks 58th on the list of the most corrupt countries in the world, and although at the international conference some EU spokesmen acknowledged Kyiv's efforts, they said that the risk of international aid being diverted could not be ruled out. This meeting was attended by President Volodymyr Zelensky, who, like his Prime Minister present in Lugano, reiterated that the country will need, in addition to all the aid it has already received, $750 billion for its recovery. In the face of these huge figures, the experts such as Juhani Grossman of the Basel Institute of Governance insist on strengthening the country's anti-corruption bodies. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Mozambique faces a strong protest by public transport unions over the increase on fuel prices. Drivers have brought the country's capital, Maputo, to a standstill in reaction to the government's recently announced record hike in prices. In the face of the massive response, the executive now suggests the possibility of some subsidies for the sector. The drivers have demanded an increase in fares, but the government fears a massive protest because of the impact it could have on the cost of living. A spokesman for the Transport Minister, Ambrosio Sitoe, announced a few hours ago at a joint press conference with the Federation of Road Transport Associations that they have given themselves a month to work out how the subsidy will function. Meanwhile, the country must deal with inflation that is already over 9.3%, the highest in the last 5 years. Algeria celebrates 60 years of independence on July 5th and has prepared the biggest military parade in its history. The Ministry of Defense will mobilize this Tuesday more than 3,000 military units in a historic military deployment, although it will not be more relevant than the speech of President Abdelmajid Tebboune. According to the presidential office, during his speech today, the head of state will lay the foundations of the government's action for the coming years. The parade has a large list of international guests and is taking place in a very tense international context, especially with Morocco, a country hostile to Algeria and which maintains tense relations with all the countries of the region. The Central African Republic, one of the poorest and most troubled countries in the world, unveils plans to launch its own digital currency. President Faustin Archange Touadéra announced on an online event that this country will create the Sango coin, which he believes will be the solution that will change not only the Central African Republic but also other countries. The currency is named after one of the two official languages in the landlocked country, rated the world's second poorest nation under the UN's Human Development Index. Touadéra explained that the Sango, through a platform called Crypto Island, will become the catalyst for the tokenizing the nation's vast natural resources. The president did not provide any timeline or other details. In Libya, tires were burned in the streets of Tripoli, the country's capital, as part of a protest against deteriorating living conditions in the North African nation. Libyans, many of them impoverished after a decade of turmoil and swelter in the summer heat, have been enduring fuel shortages and power outage of up to 18 hours a day, even as their country tops Africa's largest proven oil reserves. The country has been in chaos since a NATO-backed uprising plunged the country into a civil war that ended with the assassination of President Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. UN talks in Geneva to break deadlock between rival Libyan institutions failed to resolve key differences. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for unity to overcome the continuing political stalemate. The U.S. State Department admitted Monday that the bullet that killed Palestinian U.S. journalist Shireen Abu Akleh on May 11th was fired by the Israeli military. The conclusion does not differ from that already provided by the Palestinian side, although the State Department did say by way of justification that the reporter was probably killed by unintentional shooting by the Israeli Defense Forces. The Palestinian Authority Attorney General Akram Al-Khatib, however, warned that his investigation proved that an Israeli soldier killed Abu Akleh directly and deliberately. Abu Akleh, a well-known Al Jazeera correspondent, lost her life in the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied territory while covering an Israeli military operation against Palestinians. The bullet that killed the journalist was reportedly fired from a distance of 170 to 200 meters by a sniper with a clear line of sight. Today, the United States says it has not been able to reach a definite ruling on this investigation. The Suez Canal announced on Monday a record profit of $7 billion for the 2021-2022 fiscal year after repeatedly raising transit fees for ships through the crucial passage for world trade. The chairman of the Suez Canal Authority, Osama Rabi, said Monday that between July 2021 and June 2022, some 1.32 billion tons of cargo transited through the canal, providing a $7 billion rent in transit fees, the highest in its history, for an increase of 20.7% compared to the previous financial year. Egypt, got between inflation of over 15% and a recent devaluation of the pound by nearly 20%, had increased transit fees, particularly for oil and gas ships, by 6% in February and then by 5 to 10% in March. The Suez Canal handles about 10% of the world's maritime trade and is one of Cairo's main sources of foreign currency. The government of Australia has declared a national disaster due to heavy rain across much of its territory. In the last few hours, more than 50,000 people have been evacuated in emergency. The executive requires emergency spending to address More than 102 evacuation orders and 55 warnings for residents in the northeast and southwest of the city of Sydney. Over the past 4 days, some parts of Australia have received up to 800 millimeters of rain, which is far more than the annual average for cities such as London. So the New South Wales Police Station has received more than 5,300 requests for assistance in less than 72 hours. This is the fourth flooding in the region in the last 18 months, and in March, authorities reported 9 deaths in the Queensland region as a result of the weather phenomenon.
From his partially submerged home upstream, what's to help save what they could as floodwaters rose. Neighbours' homes.
TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other faraway nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. We have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.
Hola, ¿qué tal?